Values are essential to create realistic paintings because they reveal the presence of light. It is through values that light can be represented on the surface of the object, giving it the illusion of form and volume. Light and shadows are omnipresent, and if we are used from childhood to represent things with symbols, with abstract lines, the actual visual reality is that our eyes only perceive masses of value. There are no lines in nature, only patterns of light and dark shapes next to each other. There are two ways to see: to conceive or to perceive. To conceive consists in abstracting the object in front of your eyes of its real appearance, to draw from it a symbolic representation, most often delimited by an outline. To perceive is to consider the object as it appears, without any outline and without any symbolization. Perceiving consists in seeing the object as a complex arrangement of masses of shadows, halftones, and highlights. Basically, we see shapes, not things. Perceiving is much more difficult than one might think, simply because we are intellectual beings first. Very early on in our childhood, we learn to see the world in an abstract and symbolic way in order to think and communicate more easily. We draw a house with a square and a triangle and say that it's a house, even though a house doesn't really look like this if you carefully look at it. The abstract symbol is infinitely useful, but not so much for the artist who wants to paint the world in a realistic way. And values are primordial for the artist, but for the beginner, the first attempts often end up looking like a soup of values without coherence. Add to that the difficulty of color and you get a formless painting with rubbery contours and overblended values. Today I'm going to present to you an Atelier-inspired exercise that will help you explore values in a simplified way to better visualize the large areas of shadows, halftones, and highlights. This exercise consists of making a still life with only 3 values and with no blending from one area to the other, which means that all the value areas will have hard edges as if they had been cut out of paper. The premise is that it's easier to draw shadow shapes with hard edges and soften them later than to do the other way around, start with soft edges and try to sharpen them afterwards. Painting is not unlike sculpture. First, a hard geometric block, which is then softened slightly and polished only at the very end. For this exercise, however, it's more appropriate to keep in mind the idea of pieces of paper and scissors. In this case, edges are straight and hard, and this is how we'll try to paint. To do this exercise, you will need a black box and a simple model like this one. You can do the same with any type of object that you can find around you. You can find a vase or a teapot or whatever works for you. And if you want, you can also find this image on my website in my resources for artists section. You'll only need a few brushes, a small prepared surface, and the following pigments: white, ivory black, and umber. Of course, oil painting is a complex practice at first. You need to know all the basic skills and advanced techniques that every painter needs to know, such as the use of mediums, surface preparation, glazing, impasto, and all the basic elements of color. Because these technical aspects are so essential, I have designed my course, The Practical Guide to Oil Painting, to allow both beginners and intermediate painters to exploit the full potential of oil painting. Now available at an exclusive but limited discount, so make sure to check it out before it expires. You just have to follow the link below. Alright, let's go back to the video now. First, let's mix half ivory black and half raw umber to create a mixture that's less bluish than ivory black alone. Then by adding white, let's pre-mix 3 tones. One dark tone for the shadows, one mid-tone or half-tone, both words are correct, and one light tone for the highlights. Try to choose those 3 values accurately by looking closely at your model to match what you see. Of course, the real model has almost infinite nuances of values, and you need to narrow them down to only 3. Try to choose the dark and light values according to what you see, the darkest and lightest on the model. And as for the halftones, there are a multitude of them, so try to find an average value halfway between the darkest and the lightest. Organize your palette by separating these 3 pools of paint well, because the exercise is specifically to avoid mixing them together and to apply them in hard edges, flat patches. If you want to simplify the exercise a little bit, you can start by drawing a few main contour lines with a colored pencil. However, I can only recommend that for this exercise, you try it without drawing any lines, because this exercise is all about doing things without lines and visualizing the value masses as a whole. A good compromise might be to draw a small sketch first on a separate piece of paper, as if you were drawing the pieces of a puzzle to cut out, and then with this sketch in mind, on a separate canvas, start the painting without any outline. The exercise is quite tricky, but you'll get there. For each shape, ask yourself which value group it belongs to: shadows, midtones, and highlights. Of course, in the real world, not all edges are so straight and sharp, so you'll have to simplify things. Much like artists who work with spray paint and stencils. If you're not sure which value to use for a given shape, squint and ask yourself what seems to be the closest. And of course, it cannot be perfect. You only have 3 values. It just needs to be close, and you'll see that you can do so much with just those 3 values already. Proceed with flat strokes, avoiding to let the edges blend into each other, which can be quite tricky sometimes because they naturally blend. So you want to try to avoid this. You don't need to force yourself to be extremely flat and sharp. Just try to use flat brushes. Be mindful of avoiding to let them blend naturally when they touch. What's funny is that you see that without even trying, you're already doing some type of blending naturally on the surface, which is already a great indication of how painting works. Another good thing to do is to try to locate the terminator line that separates the shadow area from the light area. If this line becomes soft and if the edge is harder to locate some places, you can cut through the middle with a clean edge with your brush and ignore the soft transition, and just with your brush make the demarcation straight. Imagine that you're not painting but rather gluing together pieces of black, gray, and white paper, or putting together pieces of a puzzle. So you get the point. Divide the subject into 3 value steps. It's going to be hard at first, especially handling the paint and avoiding to blend. If you think that this goes too fast and if you'd like to see the real-time version, know that the uncut version is available on my Patreon, as well as hours upon hours of content and commentary. So if you're interested, and if, as a bonus, you think that this channel deserves your support, you can check out the link in the description. So what next? When you have a global image of your model, the exercise can stop there. You've probably already learned a lot. See, it's not so complicated after all. No need for more detail, no need to spend hours on it. It doesn't have to be super precise. More than the final result, What matters is how you see and break down the structure of the shapes. As an optional step, from there you can, if you wish, but it's not mandatory, add 2 more levels of shading between the halftones and the other 2 values. This will give you 5 levels of value with extra light halftones and dark halftones. And you'll see that already with 5 steps of values, you can obtain a much greater level of depth and volume. And the more values you add and the more precisely you define the shapes, and the more it starts to get some volume, even though there is actually no blending at this point. And there is actually a second optional step. You can, if you want, try blending the edges to get a more realistic result after that. And you'll see how easy it is. Remember our starting point. We said that it's easier to draw shapes with hard edges and soften them later than to start with edges that are too soft and try to make them sharper. And with this puzzle-like way of painting, blending with a mixture of the 2 neighboring areas is enough to achieve very easily a fairly convincing result. Overall, this exercise is crucial for realistic painting because it avoids making a typical beginner's mistakes that I call a value soup, i.e. blending excessively while the value areas are badly proportioned and badly placed. It's because of this value soup that you get drapery that looks like they're made out of plastic. You get dirty transitions and muddy colors in portraits, dark areas where there shouldn't be any, and so on. Typical beginner mistake. And forcing yourself to categorize values into 3 main groups, shadows, midtones, and highlights, helps to prioritize values. It's better to have shadow shapes with hard edges if they are correct and well placed than soft, randomly blended values. Excessive blending is one of the main pitfalls for beginners. It sort of gives a vague impression of realism, but if the whole thing is not structured well in a coherent way, overly blending can easily end up as a sort of soup of values. Blending is a good thing, but it should be done last, when the structure of the value masses is well established. Just like the sculpture only polishes the statue when the shape is right on the entire thing, blending happens in the end for the painter when the shadow shapes are well established. I hope that this simple exercise will help you avoid the beginner trap and understand how to improve in your own paintings. That's going to be it for this video. If you liked it, remember to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to support the channel. Again, a huge thank you to my Patreon members. This video wouldn't be possible without your support. And if you want to join the community, you'll find a link in the description below. You'll also find a link to both my courses, my oil painting course and my color course. Alright, that's it for today. As always, my friends, joy and inspiration to you. Bye.